Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
It all started with something Brandon never imagined would affect him. He was the kind of guy who believed that if you did the right thing, good things would come your way. He grew up in a small town, surrounded by people who valued hard work, loyalty, and respectful silence, simple but solid things. He carried that into adulthood. A stable job in cybersecurity, a quiet routine, and a deep desire to build something real with someone. He never needed much to feel fulfilled. It was enough to come home, make a simple dinner, and share a laugh with whoever was by his side. He met Madison while he was living at that pace. She seemed to come from a place completely different from his. She didn't just walk into a room, she took it over. Her confident manner, designer clothes, fast-talking style, everything about her practically shouted presence. They bumped into each other at a corporate event he almost skipped. It was supposed to be another boring company gathering, but it turned into the start of what Brandon believed would be his future. Madison took an interest in him in a way that felt rare. She didn't see him as just another tech guy, but as a stable, kind man she could trust. And that moved him. Soon they were going out together, dinners, long walks, nights watching old movies. She said she felt at peace with him, that he was the balance her chaotic life needed. Brandon gave himself completely. Before they knew it, they were living together. He changed his routine for her, trading restful weekends for extra freelance gigs just to fulfill her wishes for nice things, pricey experiences, and upscale parties. He did it gladly, convinced that real love required commitment, effort, and sacrifice. Even when her remarks started, seemingly harmless comments that still stung, he told himself it was just her way. When she teased his simple car, joked about his clothes in front of friends, or rolled her eyes at his technical work talk, Brandon stayed silent. He believed she truly loved him and that those details would pass. Until, one Tuesday, he decided to do something he never did. He left work early. The client meeting ended sooner than planned, and he thought he'd use that extra time to pick up Madison's favorite meal from the restaurant she loved. Maybe a small gesture, but full of intention. He wanted her to know he was thinking of her for no special reason. He grabbed the takeout and headed straight to the apartment. As soon as he got there, he noticed the silence. It wasn't the normal sort of quiet when someone's concentrating, it felt empty and odd. He set his keys down on the counter and walked down the hallway. Right before reaching the bedroom, he heard her voice on speaker. She sounded relaxed, playful, like she was telling a juicy secret to someone close. Brandon stopped, frozen, trying to make sense of what he was hearing. He has no idea, he's there being all perfect, treating me like a queen. And here I am, laughing on the inside. It was like taking a punch. Then came laughter. A man's voice responded calmly, as though they'd shared this closeness for a while. Madison said she had to keep up the act until after the wedding. She called Brandon useful but boring, mentioned that she had to fake enthusiasm whenever he talked about his boring IT stuff. In that moment, Brandon recognized something he'd never heard before: contempt. It wasn't just betrayal, it was mockery. It was a whole plan. She was with him for her own benefit and laughed about it when she thought he wasn't around. He stood there, takeout in hand. The plastic bag felt clammy, but he hardly noticed the heat, just the heavy feeling sinking from his chest to the floor. Instead of storming into the bedroom, yelling, crying, or making a scene, he took a deep breath, pulled out his phone, opened the voice recorder, and hit the red button. He let her words spill out, captured one by one. That suite at the hotel, the view, the wine, and he pays for everything without a clue. She laughed while the other man said he couldn't wait to see her again. Brandon clutched his phone so hard he thought it might snap. But he didn't interrupt. He just listened, recorded it all, and then left. Quiet. Rigid. Still clutching the dinner, heart already in ruins. He didn't know exactly what he would do, but he knew what he would never accept again. And above all, he knew this story was nowhere near finished. Over the next few days, Brandon lived in a constant state of internal alert. The silence that used to comfort him began to hurt. He already knew about her cheating, he'd heard it himself, yet he still went to bed with her, sat at the same table, and answered her texts as though nothing had happened. Not because he was weak, but because he wanted to grasp just how far this went before making any move. One recording wasn't enough. He wanted to understand exactly how long she'd been staging this act and how much of their life together had been an illusion. During that time, he started investigating with caution. He checked her call logs, noticed patterns, checked GPS data from apps on her phone that were still linked to his computer. He organized dates, times, addresses in a spreadsheet. Little by little, he realized this wasn't just a one-off fling. It was a deeper connection, propped up by carefully calculated lies. Eric, the man on the other end of the speaker call, showed up in her schedule every time she said she was out with friends, dealing with meetings, or taking quick trips for wedding errands. He also found archived messages where Madison wrote things like, "I need to get every penny out of this show," and "just a few more weeks until I wrap this up." It wasn't just cheating, it was strategy. It was ice cold. A scheme where he'd just been a piece on her chessboard, a way to maintain a certain professional image and social media narrative. He felt betrayed not only as a man but as a human being who'd believed he was building a home, while in reality he'd been nothing but a stepping stone in her personal plan. Their shared life was propped up by performance. Even after all that, Brandon stayed quiet. He went to work, greeted coworkers, kept his focus. But inside, something new was emerging. It wasn't pain anymore, it was direction. He wasn't after reckless revenge or impulsive justice. He wanted strategy. He wanted to control the moment, the exposure, and the impact. That's when he remembered the engagement party Madison had been planning for weeks. The one she claimed would mark the next phase of her personal brand. An event with influential guests, hand-picked friends, and full photo coverage. She called it the beginning of our love story for the world to see, posting photos of everything from dress fittings to cake tastings to lighting tests. Brandon watched quietly. Then he realized that would be the perfect moment. The exact night she planned to sparkle would be the night he'd show who she really was. And he wouldn't need to throw a fit or raise his voice. All he had to do was present the truth. He had the recording, the evidence, he just needed the right stage, right in front of the people she most wanted to impress, with everything revolving around her own ego. The humiliation would land on its own, carried by the weight of her own recorded words. In the days leading up to it, he merely nodded while she went on about invitations, flowers, and the catering menu. He watched closely while she rehearsed her speech, mentally noting every detail. He knew she wouldn't actually be giving any speech. He knew all eyes would be on him and that, in that moment, there'd be no filter or hashtag to save her. For the first time in a long while, he felt strong, because he no longer looked for meaning in anything she said. Now he just waited for the right time to turn all that acting into truth. The engagement party arrived with all the sparkle Madison had hoped for. An exclusive guest list, a rented rooftop at one of the priciest spots in town, lighting set up just right for perfect photos, and a photographer devoted solely to capturing her every move that evening. Guests arrived full of smiles, praising the venue, the ambience, and the impeccable decor, exactly as she wanted, an event that felt straight out of a magazine, customized to feed her professional and social persona. For her, it was more than a milestone in their relationship. It was part of the story she was selling to everyone, the continuation of that ideal figure she'd curated ever since she met Brandon. But while she dazzled the crowd, greeting everyone with confidence and control, Brandon made his way there with a whole different vibe. He arrived a few minutes after the party started, just enough time for the crowd to settle and the atmosphere to feel stable and comfortable. Even though he entered quietly, people noticed. He wore casual clothes, ignoring the event's upscale tone, and a t-shirt that said, "Trust isn't asked for, it's built." For some, it seemed subtle, for others, it was a silent warning. Madison spotted him and smiled, acting clueless. She asked if he was okay, teased him about his outfit. He just looked at the microphone, then at her. He walked straight to the front of the room without warning, politely but firmly asking for everyone's attention. The crowd fell silent, expecting some romantic moment or a public show of affection. What happened next made everyone see things differently. He started talking about their relationship, but without dramatics. He explained how he'd truly believed for a long time that they were building something real, based on genuine sacrifices, tough decisions, and emotional commitment. He said he gave his best, even when Madison's demands and attitude made him feel small. He spoke clearly, calmly, never raising his voice. Then he took out his phone. With one tap, her voice filled the room, the recording from that call days before. "He has no idea, he's all perfect, treating me like a queen," she sounded so light and mocking, far from the image she projected. All eyes turned to Madison, who tried to keep her cool, but her rapid blinking and stiff posture gave her away. She walked toward Brandon, telling him to stop, but he continued, playing the parts about Eric, the affair, the fancy hotel, the laughter at her wedding dress. Each sentence shattered the story she'd worked so hard to sell. There was no chance to explain herself. She'd lost control of the narrative. People around them reacted with shock, some started recording on their phones, others exchanged horrified looks. Her mask fell, along with the pristine reputation she'd guarded. Brandon wrapped up with only a few words. He said there would be no wedding, that he was done with the party, thanked everyone for coming, apologized to his parents and the few friends who were still there, then walked out. He left behind frozen smiles, stopped camera flashes, and a woman surrounded by everything she'd wanted, except for the truth she tried to hide. From that point on, her name spread through social media for all the wrong reasons. The story moved beyond the party and went viral. The audio circulated. Clips from the video popped up in private groups, then in public forums. The woman who once sold herself as the epitome of authenticity was now seen as two-faced, calculating, and cruel. Her public image collapsed like a house of cards. Her professional credibility took a hit, clients started distancing themselves, and people who once praised her sent terse messages saying they were rethinking their partnerships. It didn't take long for her to realize that by lying to the person who most supported her, she'd also lied to the rest of the world. Everything she had built, nurtured by lies, was rotting right before her eyes. In the days that followed, Madison's routine turned into a minefield. Messages that used to be full of compliments were now full of questions and demands she couldn't answer. Clients who had ongoing contracts with her canceled without warning. Some brands removed any mentions of her on their social media pages. Influencers who once shared stages with her started avoiding her, as if being near her threatened their own reputations. Even friends drifted away. Her downfall wasn't just professional, she felt it personally, too. People who used to admire her now saw her as a fraud. All the things she'd spent years working on and perfecting crumbled, and the worst part was that she knew she'd brought it on herself. She tried to hold out against the consequences. She sent Brandon long messages alternating between tearful apologies and shaky explanations, as though there was still something left to save. When he didn't respond, her frustration spiked. She sent audio messages full of accusations, blaming him for going too far, calling him the traitor, even saying he'd ruined her life. But the more she lashed out, the clearer it became that her remorse came not from hurting him but from being exposed. She wanted to manage the fallout, not own up to her mistakes. Meanwhile, Brandon kept moving forward. He left the apartment, changed his number, and handed all the evidence of her cheating to his lawyer to clear up any future issues. He was determined not to waste any more time where he'd already lost so much of himself. He moved to another city and took a job as an independent consultant at a tech startup. It was a modest beginning, but he had the freedom to create, make decisions, and invest his energy in something that paid back in real ways. Each good night's sleep and productive day reminded him that he no longer had to shrink himself to fit someone else's vision of life. He was building his own. While traveling to Chicago to present at a cybersecurity seminar, something unexpected happened. Glancing through the list of event organizers, he spotted her name, though in a slightly altered form. He recognized it instantly. She was trying to rebuild her career under a new professional identity, hoping to leave her past behind. He was curious, but said nothing. When it came time for his presentation, he took the stage with the same clarity and technical depth that had helped him stand out in his field, delivering a clear, straightforward talk. At one point, he spoke about ethics and digital trust, illustrating how real-life stories shape people's and companies' reputations, without naming names. The audience got the hint. After he finished, several people came to congratulate him, including a young journalist named Kate who asked for an interview. A few minutes into it, Madison appeared from a side hallway, looking worn out and anxious. She tried to smile, but her embarrassment was obvious. She asked if they could talk for a minute. He looked at her for a moment and agreed. They walked to a quieter corner. She started talking about how hard it had been to rebuild her life, how losing everything made her reflect on who she was, and how she saw things differently now. She apologized for hurting him, said she wanted him to be happy. He listened calmly. When she finished, he replied softly, "You destroyed yourself when you chose to lie. I just showed what you were doing behind everyone's back." Then, before turning away, he added, "What you lost wasn't because of me, it's because you never had the courage to be the person you pretended to be." She just stood there, his words echoing inside her, and for the first time in a long while, Brandon walked away feeling complete. Not out of revenge, but because he understood he'd finally moved on. He had nothing else to prove. Justice didn't come through shouting, but through well-timed truth. Now she would deal with the fallout of her own schemes, while he lived a genuine life, no masks, no performances, and no fear of starting over. A few weeks after that last conversation, Brandon got an unexpected email from a Los Angeles law firm specializing in contract disputes and public image. The subject line read, "Urgent request for contact, regarding Madison Clark." When he opened it, he found out that one of the companies that had hired Madison's image consulting services was suing her for bad faith, arguing they'd been misled into signing based on a personal credibility that, after the leaked audio, turned out to be fake. Brandon was named as a witness, not because he was attacking her, but because he had unintentionally exposed the truth that proved her real character. He didn't hesitate to respond. He took part in an online meeting with the attorneys and handed over all the files he'd saved. It wasn't revenge. By then, she no longer mattered emotionally to him. He simply recognized that silence often protects manipulators and that sometimes, the truth has to come out, however uncomfortable it might be. The case caused a stir. Others came forward with similar accounts of dealings with her. As the lawsuit grew, a judge eventually issued a temporary order barring Madison from any work in image consulting. It was like the world was slowly giving everyone exactly what they deserved: for her, the fallout of her own lies; for him, the peace that comes from integrity. Over time, Brandon gained even more strength. His consulting business grew and started drawing more attention in the corporate world. One of his newest contracts came from a company that had once turned him down, ironically, the same one that had previously worked with Madison. During their final meeting to seal the deal, the CEO gave him a small smile and said, "People try to build empires by editing themselves into an ideal. You chose to be real, even when it would have been easier to fake it. That's why you're here now." He thought about that for days. It was more than a compliment, it was confirmation of everything he'd gone through, staying above the dirty games. After everything, he understood that love, no matter how beautiful, has to be genuine even when no one's watching. He learned that respect is worth more than any public declaration, and that silence, used wisely, can speak louder than any speech. He saw that justice doesn't always come with applause, but with consistency. And sometimes the biggest victory doesn't involve destroying someone else, but lifting yourself up without needing applause. Brandon didn't just win a fight, he won himself. And that alone changes everything, because choosing truth, even when it hurts, is how you plant freedom. And whoever plants freedom eventually harvests peace. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.